Navigating the holiday season with a loved one who has Alzheimer's disease can feel really overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. In this episode, we're going to be sharing some expert tips to help you create meaningful moments, reduce your stress, and increase the joy in your joyful holidays. So whether it's adjusting your traditions, managing expectations, or finding new ways to connect, we're going to guide you through this season to make it brighter for everyone involved. So let's turn the challenges of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias into opportunities for love, compassion, and connection. So welcome back to all of my subscribers, and particularly my YouTube and AgeWise U members. We've built an amazing community over the past 4 years of the podcast. And if you're new to this channel and to the podcast, welcome to This Is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. I'm Dr. Melissa Batchelor, and I am a nurse and a nurse practitioner with nearly 30 years of experience caring for older adults and their families. And for the next little while, I'm inviting all of my podcast insiders to join me for the live recording of the podcast. So if you'd like to join me for a future podcast recording, stay tuned to the end to find out how you can join me for these weekly live events. And the reason I wanted to focus on today's topic is because the holidays are a time that many families get together, and sometimes for the only time each year if everyone lives in different locations. A lot of caregivers, though, who are providing care day in and day out, you're already stressed, and then the holidays can just add to that stress. But with early conversations, the holidays can still be a very special time of year for everyone. I am so excited today to be joined by Dangle and Dot. They were on the podcast a few months ago, and so we're going to include the link to the previous episode in the show notes. So in that episode, they shared how they are working to help change the narrative about Alzheimer's disease and dementia from this tragedy narrative that is so rampant into a more positive one, which is a message that I totally support, because just like anything in life, nothing is all bad. So welcome, Dangle and Dot.
Thank you.
You guys have been on this journey yourselves, so I'll let you introduce yourselves and then we will get started.
Okay, I'm Dangle.
And I'm Dot, and together we're daring to do dementia differently, if you have to be correct. And Dangle, tell us about you.
In 2013, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and then in 2017, re-diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. So I have lived my time helping others, and that helps me. And we are now Dangle and Dot, helping a lot of others.
Yes, yeah. And I am Dot. I represent care partners, I'd like to call them. Alzheimer's disease, unfortunately, has been in my entire lifetime, losing 7 family members. And I'm in my master class of caregiving right now, caring for a special needs adult brother and a mom on hospice. And I've also paralleled that with a career in dementia research and brain health community education, working at the Cleveland Clinic. But together, we're coming together as a care partner to talk about it from both sides of the story and how there is joy, there's chances to live well and explore new things.
And by knowing an inside reality and match it with an outside reality, we all have a better idea of how we might speak or communicate and how we might be received.
Yes. So we consider this challenge in our life a chance to grow.
Everything's an opportunity.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, I think that one of the things that anytime you're trying to help somebody else with whatever it is that you're doing, it's an opportunity for both people to learn and to grow, because sometimes as the care partner whose brain is supposed to be working just fine, we may have come in with an approach that the other person just doesn't really appreciate in that moment. And so, that's also humbling to us, but a learning opportunity to be like, maybe next time I shouldn't come in hot for that, so that, and I love having you ladies here, just because you do have the perspective of both sides. And as a clinician, I've always seen both sides, but I never really went home with people to see how it all was really shaking out, but could kind of help them problem solve with some things in the office. So
Yes.
So
And likewise, we appreciate the just quality of the information that you are providing.
Yeah, it's
that
spectacular.
is so key. It's one of our key points that we always tell
Yeah.
learn, but learn well from someone
We feel fortunate
in the
to
field.
be seated here today with you. Thank you.
well, all right. Well, so now that we've gotten all our mutual admiration kind of out there, let's dive into these practical tips and personal stories. They're going to help people that are listening today to create a more positive and meaningful season. And we're going to first talk about some of the tips if the person is still living at home, and then we'll transition in case the loved one is living in a facility. So I guess we could start with either one of you. What are some of the things that you recommend for people to do if the person is still at home?
Yeah.
Well, I think, one of the things that probably stands out most is that that familiar surroundings. And when we start bringing people in at holiday times and they're rushing and they're carrying the food in and the packages in and there's a hubbub around, um, that's when someone with dementia often just sort of steps back because it is not comfortable for them. And so if the forethought could go into how can we manage those kinds of things so that it is like a more normal day, and start the afternoon or morning off on an okay, because you're sort of knocked out of your position of comfort immediately because nobody means to, but they're got arms full and little kids running around and our grandkids that we want to hug and love, and sometimes that's not easy.
Right.
So I would
Actually, I was going to say that's actually called sensory overload. And you
Mhm.
don't actually have to have Alzheimer's disease for that to happen. If I used to tell my mom, I was like, my grandmother lived by herself. Like most of the time she was alone, but she had family and friends that would come in. But when you go from being in a historically kind of quiet environment to all of the activity and the bump up in energy, it can just be overwhelming. So it is important to keep an eye on, well, everybody really, because it can happen to children too.
Yeah.
But that term is called sensory overload.
Mhm. Very
right,
much.
and as an aging person too, I got a double dose of it. So I just, yeah, you're right, it can happen
Yes.
too.
And I have learned from sort of the care partner role, I always like set goals in a way. Like, what is the overall arching goal of this holiday with my loved one, depending on where they are, right? Where are they? Where are we in the disease? So what is the most important aspect of the holiday? And generally it is trying to create the mood, the spirit, to bring forth the love and the spirit of the holiday. And how can we best achieve that? Literally, if I'm exhausted and I know someone has some sensory overload, how can we uh, change the holiday traditions enough to
Appease both sides.
yeah, to make it a peaceful, a beautiful, loving time? Again, really is what that holiday spirit to me is all about. And so what elements do I know about my loved one that would achieve that? Like, it is a special food that we can make at home. Can we make it home together? Like, maybe my mom loves setting the table. So what elements of can she still do where she could set the table and feel that sense of she's helping, right? That sense in her of being a mother that still wants to help, and preparing a dish or talking about old dishes that we used to eat is even fun.
Yeah, and I think you bring up an important point that keeping your main goal, which should be the emotional kind of satisfaction that everybody should leave the holidays with being emotionally satisfied, not frustrated, upset, anxious. And then saying, maybe we don't have to do all 5 of these things that we could do 20 years ago, but what are the key elements, which I actually think is also a great way for families to be really reflective about what are the core traditions that make you a family, and then maybe having more discussions about those so that the focus is on what's really important to the entire family instead of, are we going to do these 5 things today? Or maybe a certain subgroup of the family goes off. Like I'm thinking at Christmas, people, would go out and buy Christmas trees. Well, maybe not everybody needs to do that. Maybe that's a good time for some people to go, and then maybe, some of us take a nap, which I would be in that camp. By the way.
And yes, and especially that caregiver who's already got a lot of responsibilities, right? Like, what are ways we can help the caregiver if you're a outside family member? I think is a really nice gift to the caregiver, right? Can you do a lot of the cooking and bring things? Please don't drop off a raw turkey because it's just not going to work.
You forgot something.
I mean, that's just not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Or to ask the question, to say, what is the core thing that you want to prepare? And then what could you delegate to the rest of us, to help you? Because I do think sometimes caregivers or care partners or people that are the responsible one, and you had a great term for that last time, Nancy, the festivity coordinator. So, but to be able to ask for help and to be able to receive help and to be able to delegate and have these conversations ahead of time so that everyone's expectations are kind of met. So what are some other ways, to kind of make the holidays special and some traditions that you guys think are important?
Well, I think an important thing for someone living with is that they like to be recognized. And I think on the other side of the coin, when the children come in or friends or whatever, they have a tendency just to nod and pass by. And I think, it's time for a little education in saying and for setting up. That please take a minute and sit down by Aunt Elda and talk to her and I think people don't know what to do with us, and I imagine that, and I think that let's just roll our sleeves up and not act like it is something special. It is something that we're doing to help our loved ones and to help ourselves and to help the person living with. I mean, it is for us all. And it just makes for a warmer, kinder, gee, I'm looking forward to this next year. And I think it's simply that people don't know. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't want any part of it, right? Ugh, I don't want to hear about that. But it is. And if they get it in little doses, they don't really know that they're getting it. You know what I'm saying? They're getting the information and the how-to, and it doesn't sound like someone's preaching to them, right?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, one thing that people need to understand is that it's not a contagious disease.
That's not a contagious, yes.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say, Kat?
And I just think, like, on the heels of Nancy is to, I understand it's uncomfortable sometimes for family members, maybe sometimes who are not, there have been enough changes that it makes people a little like, avoidant, maybe, like you were talking about, of that person. But again, around education and how just sitting and being present, I think is the biggest gift, right? Not presence is all about non-judgment, really, what somebody's saying or what they're doing. Do they remember me or not? Just actually sitting and trying to have a conversation as it is unfolding right in front of you, right? And just acknowledging that person.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, as you're talking about that, one of the biggest things people need to be aware of is that they may not understand your words, like either person, they may not understand the words that you're using. They may not be able to use their words, but they are going to remember the way that you made them feel, because feelings remain intact throughout, until the very, very end. So
You know,
just like with most people, they don't remember half of what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. That's the best approach in my mind.
yes, it really, really is. I was thinking as we were just talking, I think even taking a teenager aside or someone beforehand and saying, if you will just sit with her and invite somebody else over so that there is a threesome that can talk, right? I think I think it's about getting people used to what they might see,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it is acceptance over a resistance kind of
Yeah.
approach.
And it's probably not that day. It's probably that, that you uh, have set it up so that it's familiar.
Mhm. And along that, though, reminiscing to way back when can, I feel like, brings out a little bit more conversation or familiarity,
Mhm.
if you will,
Mhm.
talking about, maybe holidays way back when, asking those kind of questions. What was that like? I think sometimes can prompt a little
Yes.
bit more
A photo album.
photo
Yeah.
album.
Or you
of-
could go to Kat's house and she'd play the piano and everyone
um,
would sing.
Well, so you actually bring up a really good point. This is a disease that is a trajectory. And so if you have someone with a mild cognitive impairment or they're pretty early or even moderate stage and they can still talk to you, then that's a perfect time, you're right, to unlock those the long ago memories, because those stay intact more than your short-term memories do. But the biggest, one of the things that you lose very, very late in this disease, if ever, is rhythm and music. And so when someone, and that's why families would say, well, they can't even talk to me, but they can sing all of the words to this song. And that's why. So music is, so you're already like doing stuff you probably didn't even know was so amazing.
Yes, and at my home, mood can be instantly changed by music. And if I select music I know that they loved, in those formative years in their 20s, 17, 11, that brings out some happy faces and some swaying. Singing can just be like exercise, right? It's more breathing. It's a fabulous way to celebrate a holiday, especially those old traditional songs that were always sung. That I just feel that pulls everyone together in the room, like beautiful
Well, it's
way.
funny you say that about music, because I can remember as a kid going to like a restaurant or going out somewhere with my parents, and the music that played at that time seemed to always be from my parents when they were in their 20s. And now when I go out to dinner or whatever, I hear a lot more 80s music. And I'm like, okay, when did this change? I'm like,
Now they're playing our music. Yeah.
yeah. The other thing that I think about with family traditions is, if there is a certain dish or a dish that, that the older person with Alzheimer's disease always made, is there a way to set them up for success to continue to make that, maybe just with a partner? It's actually a good time too to bring in, that teenager to say, here's how I want you to help her, to do this. Any thoughts about, kind of including people in activities?
How wonderful to have that within a family. They can't, because it just mushrooms out, because they go to someone else's house and see someone with dementia and they're able to talk with them, and and the family says, wow. And it's just a matter of maybe taking it out, right?
Yeah. And then, what if in that process, one of those family traditions, your grandma's favorite recipe gets passed down, right? And it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
Like those yummy recipes, I think that's just a wonderful way to share.
Right. And you're creating a memory
Yes.
for that younger person that will go on and say, I remember making this with my grandmother or my grandfather, that's all. Anything else you want to say about?
It's my understanding too that, well, of course, younger children bounce in with no judgment of anybody's condition. So I love children, and they bring that high energy. They bring the wonder. the light bulb is so exciting, right? All the any decoration becomes like a just incredible thing to bring that sense. And I guess somewhere like people living with dementia in the earlier stages can still maybe read a story to a little one, right? It was the night before Christmas or some little thing. And what a magic memory that would be for all. So, and I loved how children will play with your nose or angle your earring. Or
I think with my own grandmother, she really never got much past kind of like the mild to moderate phase. She became a lot more physically frail before her memory was completely gone. But when she was talking, I just told my kids, I was like, you just have to listen. And my mom's like, you know, even if it's repetitive and she's already said it, you just listen. And then if you want to ask her another question, you can ask her another question. But if she doesn't know how to answer it, she's probably going to revert back to the one thing that she does know what to talk about, how to talk about it. So we might just have to listen to her tell us the same story, you know, but just smile at her, give her a hug, you know, say it's great to see you, you know, and she's going to respond to that because the social chit chat also remains intact very, very late in the disease. So, so those are just some basic communication tips as well.
Yeah, so we facilitate a dementia support group, and our favorite term in the whole group is yes and. So no matter what the person living with dementia says, you first want to validate it with the yes, and then you can add some improv questioning that maybe you can get somewhere, you can go somewhere else in the conversation.
Yeah, because when you say no, it's like when you say no to any one of us.
Or but.
Yeah, it sort of stops and you have to recalibrate. And I think that's what we have trouble doing. And so when we heard about this yes and, it's perfect because it just says, oh, yes.
And what color was the squirrel you saw on the deck? I don't know. It can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it doesn't. It keeps the conversation going. And you can try to redirect, and sometimes that works. But not always.
I know. Yeah, I find that I can, from my mom, I get different bits of information I've never heard before.
Right. And that's another reason to continue to listen, because the storyline could always change and one little nugget will come out, you know, so you can continue to learn things about people, you know, for years to come.
Yeah.
So now let's transition into what if somebody's in a facility? You know, I'm not sure how much experience you guys have with that, but I know we talked about it before we started today. So what are some of the things that you would recommend if somebody isn't at home, but the family still wants to get together?
Well, I've not had anyone in my life in a community where they were living, but I have been around it in a few different ones. And I think that the different communities operate differently, obviously. But they do seem to create a warmth in the, we don't see the background of it, but a music room or a center as they enter, and they've got it decorated and it's warm and it's fuzzy, and there's usually a fireplace and it's sparkling and crackling, and then there's some music, and sometimes it's they have people come in and they sing, and I mean, it's lovely. It really is lovely. And one community comes to mind, and they had a activities director that had everyone singing, and I mean singing, and you just walked in, it was robust, and you just felt like, I want to be part of this. So, you know, while it's nice to have them home for sure, there are communities where they do very well at bringing a little Christmas music and.
And I would be dishonest, or if we didn't address how difficult it can be to also at the holidays, especially if your loved one maybe in a place. There's some guilt sometimes that your loved one's there. Maybe you as a caregiver, feel guilty for going out and having fun while your loved one is somewhere else. So those are sort of those tougher things to work through. But I think you can bring the family to a lot of these places too, and have your own small version of your holiday with a special food. Or again, bringing those traditions, photo albums there. But again, it's the goal is the mood, the spirit, trying to create that sense of holiday. Even maybe they don't recognize it's the holidays.
And so then you're doing it for yourself, and you're doing it
just
for,
knowing that you,
yes, the adults in the family, that they can see their loved one is enjoying a day designated as. It doesn't have to be the actual.
Some of the other things, sometimes coming into the big community activities is good, but sometimes, just like we talked about at home, having, asking if the facility, do they have a space large enough to hold your family so that you can have a private gathering? I mean, I know we did that for my grandmother's, birthday a couple of months before she passed away, but everybody was able to come together, and really celebrate. I think it was her 93rd birthday. And then it's a great time for the different generations to get together and create memories. And then you had also mentioned something, Nancy, this doesn't really necessarily have to do with the being in a facility, but what about talking to you or around you? Which would
Yeah,
you recommend?
you don't think they know it. They know it. It's something that is done, and we don't even think about it. We don't do it on purpose to people. It's just we don't think that they're listening. We don't think that they can hear, and so we forget that means that we just have to bend a little lower, get maybe a little closer, have some eye contact, if that's possible, and work through it with the intent and the focus that we want to make a contact, that we want, I think sometimes we're fearful of what might happen. I think that what I've learned along the way is that lots of times when I have thought, well, this isn't going to go well, and I put extra effort and extra energy into making the conversation, having it, I find that I walk away so pleased, and I know that person is pleased, and it to be recognized. It is so important, because the diminishing effects of losing control of your mind, your brain, is something that we on the outside don't see, but the person on the inside feels it every time.
Right. And one of the things, just to clarify, is that Alzheimer's disease does not impact somebody's ability to hear. It may impact their ability to use and understand language, and so we may sound like Charlie Brown's teacher to them. And I've now discovered that even that joke has to be like explained a little bit. I think we're of the generation that we know what Charlie Brown's teacher sounds like. If not, people can Google it and a YouTube video come up. But that just means that our nonverbal behavior matters more. So you're right about the eye contact, holding somebody's hand, touching them on the arm, giving them a hug. All of those things, the person does feel those. And we just said that part of the brain is what remains intact. But the other piece of it is a lot of older adults do have hearing loss. And so it's typically high frequency hearing loss. So if you have a very high voice, typically females have a higher voice, you do have to get closer and lower the tone of your voice and slow down, and that person can hear you, particularly if they can see your mouth at the same time. And so that's just another basic communication tip. But yes, not pretending like the person's not in the room or talking about them in the third person. Definitely.
And I really want to point out, I found this to be very helpful. As a caregiver or some family member coming in, kind of before you go in, I really believe in centering your own self first. Maybe you do have some strong emotions going on. about your loved one, again, being there, sadness or a sense of loss. But I think you project those easily when you go in to your loved one, that can create some, from your loved one's sensory perceptions. Something sad here. I don't know. This person in front of me feels sad. So I think it's so important for caregivers and family members to do their own kind of personal work, to center themselves. No, I'm just going to show up as a loving person today here, right? I would do my best to stay there. For me, like eye contact, and again, sitting on the side, not standing over top of somebody. That feels a lot weight, and talking down like you're an authority figure of some sort. All these little tweaks are helpful. And I love the idea of bringing younger family in, because we want to normalize people living with dementia in our society. Let's just let people know what it's like, right? So we do have more empathy and compassion for people who are experiencing what it's like to live with dementia.
Yep. And you're correct in the fact that people do pick up on your energy, and it doesn't matter who it is. If someone walks into the room and they're mad, well, they don't even have to say anything, but we know it. It's like this ball of fury just came in.
That wall goes up already, like, something feels funny there.
Yeah. And, so how we are feeling is definitely picked up on by a lot of different, by everybody in the family, really.
I mean, even as a younger adult, if you're excited and walk into a room and say, hey, blah, 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 or if you walk into that room and say, 2 more hours. I mean, it is just, we set the tone, don't we?
And so we had just said that earlier. They don't remember much of what we say, but they definitely remember how they make us feel, and the feelings are always preserved. And so it is the thing that you have to focus on more than the actual words. I mean, I've had a lot of great conversations with people that they kept the rhythm of the words, or, of a conversation, but the words made no sense, and that's called word salad. But we had but it was the nonverbal. We were both smiling, and we took turns. And I would ask her a question, she'd answer me back, and
little birds.
Yeah, but I was like, I have no idea what she's saying, but she seems like she's happy, so we're gonna go with that.
Or happy, yeah.
So let's the last little thing we're going to talk about is kind of some tips for the festivity coordinator, which may or may not be the primary caregiver. So maybe first explain kind of what that term means to you guys, and then share some tips and strategies around that.
To me now, I mean, there's different names in different communities. For me, that means that it is an activities person that plans things out, that makes sure that the festivity starts at such and such a time, ends at such and such a time. We're going to have somebody come play music. We're going to cater it, so food will be between this time and that time. It is someone that handles all of that. And if it's a potluck, they handle people coming in. And if you have a good one in a community, you're blessed. You know what I'm saying? Some people can really handle 15 things at once. I used to be a multitasker. Don't ask me to do it today. I might do 1 or 2 or 3, but I don't, right? So it isn't for everyone, but it is wonderful when there is someone there. And if it's in your own home that plans it, or if they take turns,
So I'd like to jump off your festivities coordinator. Let's say you're planning a family event and you're going to invite the couple that is living with dementia. Can you talk about that? Yeah, and how important it is to extend that invitation, first of all. Don't exclude out of assumptions, if you will, the offer of the invitation
to the person that is
to the couple that's living with dementia.
I gotcha. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that it's so nice to be invited and not excluded. Again, isolation is such a big thing, but when you offer, hey, come, we'd love for you to join us at our festivities. We offer open-endedness. You can come for the best hour for you too. What can I do to accommodate you while you're here? What would, maybe serve your best needs? The main thing is that we really want you to join us.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right. As you know, in all fairness, sometimes it's just easier
not to go.
not to go. Right.
Right.
It
I mean,
just,
it's like you extend. So in this situation, if you're in, if you're hosting the holiday party at your house, and maybe it's like your parents or a family friend, and one of them has a cognitive impairment, you can invite them, but they still have the choice and the autonomy to say yes or no. And if it's no, then you just have to respect that and not be upset or offended, because there could be a whole host of reasons. And I guess if you're close enough to them, you could ask, is there a particular reason? Because there might be something you could do to help, but they may just say it's just not a good time of day, but we don't want you to stop what you're doing. So I think just clarifying instead of assuming they're not coming because now they decide they don't like me or whatever,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And then I think, what about if you're the caregiver and you have family coming over? Maybe what would be some ways to handle gift giving both ways
Mm.
from the person with um, the cognitive impairment, and also people who want to give to them.
gosh, I would think it's the same, I guess, as we've always done in our we've always done it. I'm guessing there's times that we didn't, but is that I always was very wanting one person to receive a present. Everybody participates in the opening of that, watching the opening of that present. It isn't that all presents are given to everybody and it's a mad tear the present apart. So I would think you'd want it calm, cool, and collected, and one at a time. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Yeah, every family sort of has their different kind of tradition, I think, around that. For a caregiver, I if you can be clear to the guests, like, how can we make this simpler? Actually, on me as the host, like, that's how I'm thinking. Like, can we do a potluck? Can everybody bring something disposable, like things that would take work kind of off the caregiver? And in terms of gifts for a care pair could be things that maybe would give us quality time together, like I don't know, an experience together that would maybe, I don't know, be beneficial for both, or
mani pedis
together.
Massages.
Yeah.
Good and then and gifts to the caregiver. There's websites with tools that can help people living with dementia. A gift card to that. A gift of service, active service. I will come and rake your yard. I will bring you some fresh plants. Those are great.
Those are really good.
And as you guys started talking, it just made me think, even creating, like having the children create, or coupons for, like, here's I will give you a hug, or it's adult child to be like, mom, I will come spend 4 hours one afternoon with dad. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a financial gift, but if the person with my grandmother, she wanted to give all of the grandchildren a gift, and she didn't have a lot of money, but she would always have a dollar bill. Like, she'd have them in her pocket, and when she's like, here's your Christmas present, and she'd give you that dollar, and it hurts your heart to take it. But you're like, but she had to, because it was her wanting to give.
Another thing that came up in one of our groups that was really a great conversation is that maybe it is that time to give away something of value that would normally come in an inheritance after somebody passes. But perhaps a holiday is a chance to gift that while you can maybe put a story with it, or
Yes.
special watch or a piece of jewelry, like some heirloom. That maybe while living with dementia is the time to give that with that, again, that emotion that you want
Right.
to.
You may, yeah. So the only thing I would caution about that is if the person forgot they gave it,
Okay, yeah.
then they could get very upset that that person stole it. So, I think it should be a gift given with with the acknowledgement they might have to give it back, but eventually you'll get it back again.
Or maybe you'll get the story and then the learning.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you can keep the story, but
Yeah.
if the person forgot they gave it to you, you might need to,
You're going to get it again.
A rubber band gift.
yeah.
Funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up today. If people want to get in touch with you, they can go to your website, which is dangle.com. And there we're going to put up a QR code on the screen here. You have your holiday version of your contact. It's a graphic that has a QR code. And as we come back, they're going to see your lovely, lovely hats, which I love your Dangle and Dot Christmas cat hats. And then I also wanted to share, I got this lovely gift in the mail. This is Nancy's poetry. It's called Blue River Apple. And if you go on their website at dangledot.com, there actually are 3. This is the first harvest, and there's a second and a third harvest. Do you want to talk a little bit about your poetry?
Sure. Yes. Once I got my diagnosis, I woke up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., and continued to wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. every morning. Words just plummeting. And I'd write the words down, write the words down, and write the words down. And from that, I made, somebody called it a poem. And I said, good idea, it's a poem. And somebody called me a poet. And I said, boy, I don't think so. Anyway, 3 books. The first book is the first year and a half of after my diagnosis. It was an exploration of Alzheimer's through poetry. I wasn't able to write chapters. I could, though, and can still write verses. And so that's what started the poetry. And these words, for years, I kept waking up at that time and had paper and pencil, and they just came to me from someone far greater than Nancy. And so it's a trilogy. I have many, many poems to do a 4th. Just haven't taken the time to do that. But you can get them through Blue River Apple website.
And Dangle Dot.
Oh,
Yeah, they're on Dangle Dot.
So you voted back so bad. Yes,
Well,
all of them have been transferred over to Dangle and Dot.
Okay. Yes, it's dangle.com, and then you just go to the store and you'll see them there, and they're in paperback, and you have ebook options. So people can get both of those.
I'd love to share that the name of your book came from the 3 words you were unable to remember on your neuropsych test.
When you go in, they ask you to remember something, and they give you 3 or 5 words. Yeah. And I can, and so I probably will be able to do that, as you can see.
Well, if they don't change them, because it was always apple, table, penny here.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's the East Coast, West Coast thing. Yeah, but I do think they try to change them. But if you do that as a provider, then you have to be able to remember. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those 3 words test recall. And then when they ask you, and that's just registration. And then when they ask you a couple of minutes later, then that's testing your recall. But again, those are screenings. And maybe you actually were in your neuropsych testing. It's very different than the screening test they do. But it is part of the screenings that are done in a regular office, or should be done every time you go to the doctor, probably after the age of 50 would be a good idea. And then lastly, you guys are also available to be speakers, and you also have a newsletter. So if you just go to dangle.com, you can sign up for your newsletter, which I did today. So
thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate that.
Yes, we put some fun, Dangle and Dot isms in there. Just, it's a little joyful letter.
Yes, it was.
Tips.
So thank you so much for joining us today. If you found value in this episode, please hit the like button and share it with someone else that might find it helpful. If you'd like to be a part of my community and continue to learn more about aging, age-friendly initiatives, and Alzheimer's disease, don't forget to drop by my website at melissabphd.com to grab your free podcast insider guide. And you can also join the podcast private Facebook community on Facebook. And all podcast insiders are going to be invited each week to join me for the live podcast recordings in the Facebook group, and or you can join me by Zoom. So I hope you'll stop by melissabphd.com, grab your free guide, and then keep an eye on your inbox weekly for those special insider-only invitations. Until next time, be well.